Have you ever tried your hardest to be more loving, more patient, more joyful, and then lost your temper before breakfast, and still ended the day feeling like a spiritual failure? Here is a question almost no one stops to ask. What if the reason you keep losing that battle is not that you are trying too little, but that you have been reading the fruit of the Spirit as a to-do list it was never meant to be? For most of us, Galatians 5 has quietly turned into a checklist. Love, I can work on that. Joy, I need more of that. Patience, please do not ask my family. So we open the passage like a mirror that only shows what we lack. We promise to try harder, and we walk away tired again. That instinct is not foolish. The list is beautiful. The hunger to grow is real, and it is good. But what if Paul was never handing you 9 separate tasks to perform? What if these words describe something the Spirit grows in you, far more than something you have to manufacture on your own? 2 things hidden in the original language quietly rewrite the whole passage. 1 small Greek word, karpos, and 1 command, walk by the Spirit. So in this video, we are going to decode what the fruit of the Spirit actually means, why Scripture calls it 1 fruit and not 9, and what walking by the Spirit truly looks like on an ordinary, unremarkable day. Not one more burden to carry, a lighter way to live. But before we touch the 9, we have to see the 1 word in the original text that changes all of them. So the first thing we have to see is not one of the 9 words at all. It is the picture underneath all of them. Paul does not say the Spirit builds a machine, or writes a rule book, or hands out awards. He says the Spirit grows fruit, and that single image changes how we read everything that follows. Now, someone is already thinking, why does the Greek even matter? Is this just clever word study? Here is the honest answer. Paul did not write this letter in English. He wrote it in Greek, to real churches, using ordinary words those people already understood. So, when we slow down and listen to the words he actually chose, we are not inventing hidden meanings. We are simply hearing the letter the way its first readers heard it. That is all we are doing. And the picture Paul reaches for is one every person in the ancient world knew by sight. A tree, a vine, a branch heavy with fruit at the right time of year. In the Scriptures, this image shows up again and again. One of the Psalms describes a person rooted like a tree planted by streams of water, bringing forth fruit in its season. And Jesus himself said, "You will know them by their fruit." A good tree bears good fruit. You do not have to guess what a tree is. You just watch what grows on it. So notice what fruit actually is. Fruit is not something a branch squeezes out by trying harder. A branch does not grit its teeth and force an apple into existence. An orange tree does not attend a seminar on how to be more orange. Fruit appears, quietly and slowly, because a certain kind of life is flowing inside. The branch is not the source. The branch is the evidence. That is the shift. We tend to treat spiritual growth like a factory. Set the goal, apply the effort, force the result. But Paul hands us a garden instead of a factory. And a garden works differently. You do not shout at a plant to grow. You tend the conditions, you stay connected to the source, and the fruit comes as a byproduct of health. This matters for you personally, right now. If your walk with God has started to feel like standing over a fruit tree, pulling on the branches, straining to produce love you do not feel, and patience you cannot find, it may not be that your faith is weak. It may be that you have misunderstood how fruit works in the first place. You have been trying to attach fruit from the outside, when it was always meant to grow from the inside. And here is the good news, that the rest of this passage is going to open up. Healthy things grow, not by force, but by connection. That is why the character of Jesus is called fruit and not achievement. It is the natural overflow of a life joined to something greater than itself. But there is one more detail in the original text. A detail most of us read straight past, and it decides whether we see this list as a burden or as a promise. So here is that detail, and it is the second thing we have to notice. It hides in a single letter. Almost everyone, when they talk about this passage, says the fruits of the Spirit, plural. Fruits. We picture 9 separate items, like 9 boxes on a form, or 9 products lined up on a shelf. And once we see them as 9 separate things, we do exactly what you would expect. We rank them. We pick our favorites. We quietly decide which ones we are good at, and which ones we will deal with some other day. But look closely at what Paul actually wrote. He does not say fruits, he says fruit, singular. The Greek word is karpos, and it is one word, one fruit, standing in front of the entire list. Love, joy, peace, patience, all the way down to self-control. 9 qualities, yes, but one fruit. That is easy to read past, so let it land. Paul is not describing 9 skills you assemble one at a time. He is describing one kind of life that produces all of them together, the way a single healthy tree produces leaves and blossoms and fruit as one connected act of living. You do not congratulate a tree for growing a leaf while scolding it for forgetting the fruit. It is all the same life, expressing itself. Now, we have to be careful and fair here, because this is where people get hurt. Saying it is one fruit does not mean every believer displays all 9 perfectly, equally, or overnight. That is not how growth works, and Scripture never pretends it is. There are seasons when joy feels thin. There are seasons when patience is the hardest thing in the world. Maturity is slow, and it is uneven, and God is patient with the process. So this is not a new and heavier standard. It is actually the opposite, because here is what the single word quietly does. It takes the whole list off your shoulders as a checklist, and it puts it back where it belongs, as the natural shape of one life. You are not trying to force out 9 separate virtues by 9 separate acts of willpower. You are receiving one life, and these 9 words are simply what that one life looks like as it grows. And that is why you cannot really pick and choose. We would love to specialize. I will take love and kindness, thank you, but I would rather skip self-control and patience. But fruit does not work like a menu. You do not order the parts you like. Where the life of the Spirit is genuinely growing, all 9 begin to appear together, slowly, unevenly, but together, because they are branches of the same root. So if you have ever felt crushed by this passage, measuring yourself against 9 impossible standards at once, hear this. It was never meant to be 9 weights stacked on your back. It is one gift, unfolding. The pressure you felt came from reading fruits where Paul wrote fruit. Which raises the obvious question. If all 9 are really one life, one fruit, one shape, then what does that one life actually look like when you lean in close and study it? What kind of person does the Spirit slowly grow? Because before we can talk about how to walk it out, we have to see it clearly. So let us look at the portrait, up close. Now it gets personal. If all 9 are one life, let us actually look at that life, up close, the way you would study a face you are trying to recognize. And the easiest way to see it is not as a list, but as one person turned in 3 directions. Start with how this life stands before God on the inside. The first 3 describe the deep interior, love, which in Greek is agape. This is not the warm feeling that comes and goes, depending on the person in front of you. It is a chosen commitment to someone else's good, whether or not they have earned it. Then joy, chara. Not a good mood, and not the absence of pain. It is a gladness anchored in what God has done, the kind that can still stand when circumstances refuse to cooperate. And peace, Irene, which carries the weight of the old word shalom, not merely the absence of conflict, but wholeness, the sense that God is setting things right on the inside even when the outside is still a mess. Now turn the same person outward, toward other people. Here is patience, macrothumia. The word literally points to being long before you burn, slow to blow up, able to absorb provocation without exploding. Not weakness, restrained strength. Then kindness, krestotes, not being a pushover, but goodness that actually does something useful for someone in need. And goodness itself, agathosine, which is not soft niceness at all. It is moral goodness with a spine, the kind that can tell the truth and confront what is wrong when love requires it, and then turn inward one more time to what guards the life from the inside. Faithfulness, pistis, not a single burst of passion on a good day, but reliability, the quiet steadiness of someone you can count on over years. Then gentleness, prots, and please hear this one, because so many people get it exactly backward. Gentleness is not weakness. It is strength under control, power that has learned restraint. Jesus called himself gentle, and he was the least fragile person who ever lived. And finally, self-control, enkratia, not pretending your desires are not there, but keeping them from climbing onto the throne and giving the orders. Now step back and look at the whole face at once. Do you see what this is? It is not 9 personality types, where you find the one that sounds like you and settle in. It is one portrait, and if you have spent any time around the Gospels, you will recognize it, because it is the character of Jesus, patient with people who failed him, kind to the ones everyone else ignored, honest without being cruel, steady all the way to the cross. This is not a random collection of virtues. It is a family likeness. It is what a person begins to look like when the Spirit of Christ is genuinely alive in them. And this is where it stops being abstract and starts to sting a little, in a good way. Look at the portrait honestly, and you will feel where you are thin. Maybe you have real kindness but almost no patience. Maybe you have steady faithfulness but very little joy. That is not meant to shame you. It is meant to show you where the life is still growing and where you most need it to. But here is what makes this portrait so striking. Paul does not paint it in a vacuum. Just before he shows us this face, he paints a second portrait, a completely different kind of life, growing a completely different crop. And once you see the two side by side, you finally understand what is really at stake, and which one your ordinary days are actually feeding. But there is a part we would rather skip, because right before Paul shows us the fruit, he shows us the other crop. He calls it the works of the flesh. And to understand it, we have to clear up one word that trips almost everyone. The word is flesh, in Greek, sarx. And when we hear it, most of us assume Paul means the physical body, as if the body is the enemy, as if being hungry or tired or human is somehow sinful. But that is not what he is saying. Paul is not teaching you to hate your body. Your body is not the problem. Flesh, in this letter, means something deeper. It means fallen human nature turned in on itself, the old self-directed life that bends even good things inward until they curdle. And notice the language he uses, because it is not an accident. He does not call these the fruit of the flesh. He calls them the works of the flesh. Works, plural. Things you produce, things you engineer, things you strain to make happen. Set that beside the other word, and the contrast is deliberate. The flesh produces works, many of them, scattered and restless. The spirit grows fruit. One life, quietly unified. One is a factory, always busy, always straining to make the next thing. The other is simply the fruit of a life growing from the inside. And look at what the factory actually makes. Paul lists it plainly. Hatred, rivalry, jealousy, outbursts of anger, selfish ambition, division, envy. You can almost feel a community tearing itself apart in that list. People keeping score, people protecting themselves, people who cannot let an insult go, who need to win, who measure their worth by being right. It is not a list of monsters. It is a list of ordinary Tuesdays, because here is the confrontation we cannot avoid. This is not a battle between good people and bad people out there somewhere. Both crops are trying to grow inside the same heart. Yours, mine. There is a version of you that absorbs an insult and stays kind, and a version of you that fires back and calls it honesty. There is a version of you that waits, and a version that explodes. Two sources of life, pulling in two directions, and every single day you are feeding one of them. So let me ask it as plainly as I can. Think about your last 24 hours. Not your beliefs, not your intentions, but the actual harvest. The way you spoke to the person who annoyed you, the thing you clicked when no one was watching, the message you fired off in anger, or the grudge you have been quietly watering for weeks. Which crop is that? Because your days are always growing something. The only question is what? And I am not saying this to crush you. This is not the part where you are supposed to feel like garbage. It is the part where you get honest, the way a good doctor is honest, because you cannot treat what you refuse to name. Seeing the works of the flesh for what they are is not condemnation. It is diagnosis. And diagnosis is the first step toward healing. But here is where it gets difficult in a different way. If I cannot simply force the fruit into existence by trying harder, and I clearly do not want to keep growing thorns, then I am stuck between two impossible options. Willpower has failed me, and drifting has failed me. So what is left? That is exactly the question Paul answers next, with a single command that changes everything. Walk by the Spirit. So this is the fifth thing, and it is the hinge the whole passage turns on. After the two crops, Paul gives one command, and it is not try harder. It is this: walk by the Spirit, and you will not carry out the desire of the flesh. Everything comes down to that one word, walk. But before we hear what he means, notice the two wrong turns almost everyone takes. The first is the willpower turn. We read walk by the Spirit and we hear grit your teeth, tighten up, and force yourself to be holy by sheer effort. That is the legalist reflex, and it always ends in exhaustion, because we already saw that fruit cannot be forced. The second is the opposite turn. We hear grace, and we decide walking must mean sitting still. Let go, do nothing, wait passively, and if desire pulls me somewhere, well, I am free now. One turn is all strain, the other is all drift. And Paul rejects both. So listen to the actual word. In Greek, walk is peripateo, and it simply means the way you conduct your ordinary daily life, step after step after step. Not a heroic sprint, not a single dramatic leap, a way of walking. And a few sentences later, Paul sharpens it with a second word. In Galatians 5:25, he says, "If we live by the Spirit, let us also keep in step with the Spirit." Keep in step. That word, stoikio, was used for soldiers marching in a row, or people walking in line, matching their pace to a rhythm outside themselves, and that changes the whole picture. Walking by the Spirit is not you generating the power, it is you matching your steps to someone already moving. Think of a child learning to walk beside a parent, small feet trying to keep up with a steady stride. Think of following the beat of a song instead of inventing your own. The Spirit sets the pace. Your job is to keep in step, not to march off alone, and not to lie down in the road. So here is the reframe that holds it all together. Walking by the Spirit is not striving, and it is not drifting. It is dependent obedience. There is real effort in it, but it is not the effort of trying to save yourself. It is the effort of staying close, staying responsive, keeping in step. You are not the engine. You are the one who refuses to let go of the hand that is leading. And we have to be clear about something, because grace gets twisted here constantly. Keeping in step with the Spirit still leads somewhere. It leads toward holiness. Freedom in Christ was never freedom to sin. It was freedom from the old master. But the motive is completely different. You are not obeying to earn love you already have. You are walking with someone you have come to trust, and obedience becomes the natural shape of staying close. So, what does this actually look like on a Tuesday? Smaller and more ordinary than you think. It is the pause before you fire back the angry reply, the half-second where you sense another way and take it. It is the quiet nudge to make the call, tell the truth, forgive the thing again. It is noticing the pull of the old crop and choosing the next small step of obedience instead. And when you miss a step, and you will, it is not starting over from zero. It is simply catching the rhythm again and falling back in beside him, step after step after step. But a walk like that still needs strength from somewhere. You cannot keep pace with the Spirit on an empty tank of willpower. So where does the life to walk actually come from? On his final night, Jesus answered that with one last image, and it is the most hopeful picture in the whole passage. And this is where the whole passage finally breathes. To find the source of the fruit, we have to leave Galatians for a moment and step into a quiet room on the last night of Jesus' life. Picture it. The meal is nearly over. In a few hours, one of these men will betray him, another will deny him 3 times, and the rest will scatter into the dark. They do not know that yet, but he does. These are men who are about to fail badly, and knowing all of it, Jesus does not hand them a technique. He does not give them a list of rules to grip harder. He gives them a picture, drawn from the vineyards they had walked past their whole lives. I am the vine, he says. You are the branches. And this is where our key word finally comes home. The whole secret of the fruit was never in the branch. It is in the vine. Everything a branch will ever bear rises up from the life of the vine it is joined to. The sap, the strength, the very capacity to grow. So Jesus says the one thing that matters. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it stays joined to the vine, neither can you, unless you stay joined to me. Apart from me, he says, you can do nothing. Sit with the timing of that. He speaks about fruitfulness to men who are hours away from looking completely fruitless. He speaks about staying connected to men who are about to run. Because a branch cut off from the vine can still look alive for a little while. It keeps its shape. It holds its leaves. From a distance, nothing seems wrong, but it will slowly wither, because the life is no longer flowing into it. And that is the difference between a walk powered by your willpower and a walk powered by his life. Now, if you are tired tonight, if you have been straining at this for years and feel like a failure, hear this part gently. Staying joined to the vine includes the pruning. And pruning is not punishment. When the gardener cuts the branch back, it is not because he has given up on it. It is because he intends for it to bear more. Some things get cut away because they are dead. Some things get cut back precisely because they are alive, and he wants more from them. Either way, the hand holding the knife belongs to the Father, and he is not trying to harm you. He is tending you. And this is not one lonely verse. The whole New Testament sings the same note. Paul writes in Romans 8 about a life led by the Spirit, no longer ruled by the flesh. Peter, in his second letter, talks about these qualities being added to your faith and growing in you over time. The picture is always the same. Not a machine you operate, but a life you stay connected to. So let the pressure fall off your shoulders one more time. The fruit of the Spirit was never proof that you finally became impressive enough for God. It is evidence that Christ is alive in you. It is his life, showing up as your character, slowly, quietly, the way fruit always comes, not by force, by connection. And sometimes slowly is exactly what a miracle looks like. A little more patience where anger used to win, a little more peace in the dark, a little more courage where fear used to decide everything. Which brings us all the way back to where we started, to that tired checklist we opened with. Because once you have seen all of this, you cannot read those 9 words the same way ever again. So let us go back and read them one last time, with new ears. Remember the checklist we started with, the tired mirror that only showed you what you lacked. Look at it now. It was never a checklist at all. It was a description of a life. And that life was never something you had to squeeze out of yourself by force. So hold the whole picture together. The fruit of the Spirit is not 9 tasks, but one life. Not fruits, but fruit. The flesh produces works by straining. The Spirit grows fruit by living. Walking is not gritting your teeth, and it is not drifting. It is keeping in step with someone already moving. And the fruit itself is not proof that you impressed God. It is evidence that Christ is alive in you. And that quietly changes the question you carry into tomorrow. For years maybe you have been asking, am I producing enough? Am I loving enough? Patient enough? Good enough yet? But that was always the wrong question. The real question is simply this: am I staying connected to the source? Because a branch does not worry itself into fruit. It stays joined to the vine, and the fruit comes. So hear these words one more time, slowly, as if for the first time. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Not a weight on your back, a promise over your life. Not 9 things you owe, 1 life you receive. So walk by the Spirit. Keep in step with Him through this ordinary day, one small, dependent step at a time. And if you are weary tonight, let this be the thing you take with you. You do not have to grow a single one of these on your own. You were never the vine. You were always the branch. Your one job is to stay joined, to keep coming back, to keep in step again after every stumble. The growing is His work. Sometimes it is sudden, more often it is slow. And slow, in the kingdom of God, is still a miracle. A little more love where there used to be none. A little more peace where fear used to rule. That is not failure. That is fruit, quietly beginning. If this helped you see these familiar words in a new way, a quiet like and subscribe helps the next study find someone who needs it. And here is the one I would love to hear. Down in the comments, tell me the single fruit you most want the Spirit to grow in you right now. Just name it. And if someone you know has been carrying this passage like a burden, share it with them, so they can set the weight down too. May the God of peace tend you like a patient gardener. May you stop straining to produce what only He can grow. And may you learn, one ordinary step at a time, to stay close to the vine and simply let the fruit come. Keep walking with Him and keep abiding, because the branch that stays with the vine is the branch that bears the fruit.